I have no idea if anything's working or not. I'm having real internet troubles, so if you're watching, say something so that I know what's going on. Oh, chat's not working either. Let's have a look here. That's helpful. Thanks, streaming software. Is that working now? Let's see. Okay, hopefully you can hear me. Let me just do a quick test. Yeah, seems to be working. I don't know. Everything's fucked. Random internet slowdowns and disconnections, and I can't get to any of my normal news sites. So I had to disconnect my mobile from the internet and use 4G. This seems to be streaming okay. I don't know. Random sites seem to be down. So much for a relatively easy Monday stream, I guess, which sort of sucks. but here we are. Right, housekeeping. Cat's all right, hobbling around. Mum's all right, hobbling around, getting some stuff done in the house. So I've been moving furniture and helping out and stuff for quite some time. What else is going on? Still not going to be as active as I was, but I've kind of done quite a bit of work, and now I'm waiting on other people. So you might get your videos back, which means you might get some more election coverage and the next section of my advice for game publishers. But yeah, I'm going to have to work off my app today. Plus, once the cat was okay and my mum was okay, it's like my brain and my body just went floop. And I seem to be getting a cold, so if I'm sniffling and sounding like the quartering, yeah, that's why. Okay. So, right, let's get started. I'm having to use an app, which means I'm only using BBC stories today, unlike usual, and I can't control the order or anything. So, is there anything else I need to talk about? It's my birthday next month. I'll talk about that more later. What else? TERFs suck. Just fuck TERFs. Twitter. If you look at my Twitter, you'll understand why. God forbid someone have a nuanced position, or they end up getting it from both sides on that. And I'm not just saying nuance because South Park did. Right. Looks like election stuff's coming up first. So, debates. They're a relatively new thing in this country. Previously, we've more done kind of interviews and profiles, things like that. I say relatively new. It's got to be going on 10 years or more. We've actually had proper debates, but it's a bit of an Americanism that we've brought in. Anyway, many of the news channels or other channels are saying that they're only going to host people who stand a chance of actually being the next Prime Minister. Though you may remember going back the whole "I agree with Nick" thing when Nick Clegg was in the debates, and the Lib Dems and the SNP, who are pretty large blocks of votes, if not necessarily seats, they're similarly making the argument that they should be allowed to come on and participate in these debates as leaders of the biggest parties. The SNP has more people than the Lib Dems in Parliament at the moment, which just goes to show how fucked our whole electoral system is. More on that later, I expect. But they're taking these channels to court for not giving them a chance to have their say. I don't know whether they'll win. I don't think they will necessarily. Courts don't like to get involved in politics. Neither the Westminster SNP leader nor Joe Swinson is likely to end up Prime Minister, despite Swinson's delusions of grandeur. And TV channels should be able to have their own control over their programming. I guess it is unfair, but our whole electoral system is rather unfair. Hi Seb, yeah, I'll probably talk about Prince Nonce. Right. Yeah, normally I deal with comments and stuff at the end, just so you know. Because I'm having internet troubles, if anyone wants to share the stream out and tell people, that would be helpful. So, yeah, they're taking this, I think it's ITV is the first one, they're taking them to court to try and get representatives in this debate. I don't see it happening, but I'm sure Swinson, at least, will be invited on a later debate on another channel. But there you go. I'm sure there'll be clip shows and so on. Oh, if I'm sniffing and sounding like the quartering, it's not because I've gone right-wing, it's because I have a cold and I've taken some antihistamines, which I have to squirt up my nose, just so you know. Party leaders have been making election pitches to business. Basically, they're pitching to everybody, really, and everyone seems to have discovered the magic money tree that previously was only used to bribe the DUP. Because they're making all of these promises to all and sundry and everyone. Fact is, anything that anyone offers to a business at this point is just a sticking plaster over the gaping wound of Brexit. Brexit hangs over everything, all policies. But it seems like everyone's promising the earth. I guess the Greens are literally promising the earth. But everyone else seems to be offering all kinds of spending. The Tories are offering to take us back to 2007 in terms of spending, but without accounting for inflation, so don't get too excited. Labour's got all these plans for big spending and proper taxation and closing tax loopholes and things, which people seem weirdly afraid of. I don't exactly know why. Let's have a look here. Any prompts on any of the other stories? So the big thing that people have been making fun of Labour over is this whole idea of free broadband. What it actually seems to be is more like a big investment in broadband infrastructure, which has been a big problem and which the privatised British Telecom and other service providers haven't really been able to overcome, it seems, at all. So unless you live in a city, you're pretty much fucked. Now, I'm lucky here. When my internet is running, I get 75 to 80 megabits. And I live in a village, fairly rural, but the telephone exchange that serves all the surrounding villages is in my village and just up the road. You know, well within the bounds. So I was lucky, but it still took forever to come out here. And I'm not like on a Scottish island or something. Satellite internet doesn't cut it. Can have reasonable downspeed, but no good for upspeed. Copper, DSL, so on. That's just 2 to 5 megabits. That's just not gonna do it. It's screwed. So Labour's idea of using public money to invest in broadband infrastructure, it's not insane. It's not loopy. It's perfectly reasonable as a thing for them to suggest to do. And the main reason for that is because it'll provide access to everybody. I don't understand why people think this is so crazy. As someone who waited for years and years and years and years to get even slightly reasonable internet so that I can finally watch streaming movies, can finally play online effectively and stream it, that I can do these, right? I'm not spending all day uploading a 10-minute YouTube video. As someone who had to wait a long time for that, this makes perfect sense to me. And it's a big boon to the economy as well. Back before fibre was really doing its major rollout, there was a brief kind of tech boom in these kind of rural areas, like where I live, sort of Silicon Test Valley, I guess, because the internet was getting a little bit cheaper. You didn't need the super fast speeds necessarily that we have now. ISDN could be rolled out relatively cheaply, so you were getting startup tech companies converting barns and turning them into cottage industries and bringing a lot of money and investment and so on into these rural areas. And then everything kind of switched over to fibre, and the higher speeds and everything were needed. You needed a fatter pipe. And if you weren't a bigger business, you couldn't afford to have that or multiple ISDN lines or whatever run out to your business. So they all up sticks and moved back to town. If we roll this kind of stuff out everywhere, then it helps spread out business outside of urban areas, outside of London and the southeast, and that's a huge boon to everyone, especially startups and home businesses, even crafting businesses like people who just sell stuff on eBay or Etsy or whatever. You know, they need fast broadband to do their work properly. I don't see why people are so crazy and upset about it. What else? The Lib Dems are fucking it up. I mean, they're just basically relying on people's antipathy to Brexit to shore them up, and Brexit does loom over everything. But they're engaging in dodgy practices, really kind of stabbing Labour in the front, I guess, taking cues from Jess Phillips, when really we should be coming together to oppose the pro-Brexit parties, to vote tactically, to withdraw candidates. I think it's too late. I think Thursday last week was the deadline for that. But we've got the Brexit Party, albeit grudgingly, and turning on Farage in the process. We've got them standing down against Conservatives, while the pro-Remain parties seem to be... Okay, it's not the smaller parties, it's Labour. Labour's refusing to cooperate with anyone. And while we might see a surge like we did last time, the polls might be off a bit. The Tories are commanding a rather impressive lead at the moment, double digits in a lot of polls, to which I can only say, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why would you still vote for them? And especially, why would you vote for them under Boris? It seems to be a Trump effect. It doesn't matter how much he lies, how much he philanders, that we didn't leave on the 31st and he's not dead in a ditch. Although nothing seems to matter, nobody seems to care. They're just happy to go along with him. I don't get it. Nor do I get why people are so hostile to Labour. It's like, I don't like Corbyn very much. I think he's gone too far, but he's still much better than Boris. It's like in the States, you've got Bernie promising what would be very milquetoast centrist sort of policies, and he's painted as some kind of Bolshevik. Here, you've got Corbyn, who, by Northern European standards, is suggesting things that aren't really that terribly controversial or wild or out there. And in his context, he's being treated like a Bolshevik. It's just... fuck me, I just don't... I despair. I want out of this chicken shit country. So if you're a Goblin King, and I'm not too old for you to kidnap, please do get in touch. Or if you're a Viking or something, yeah, I'd love to be taken away. I'll happily work in your fields in Denmark or whatever if you just get me out of this country, please. What else have we... they're also on about renationalising Royal Mail. Don't see a problem with that. The railways, don't see a problem with that. I'm old enough to remember British Rail, and yeah, there was plenty to make fun of, like the quality of their sandwiches and so on. But privatised rail has been an absolute and unmitigated and price-gouging disaster. And it only makes sense to have your infrastructure in public hands. It's not the state taking control, it's us, because we theoretically control the state, right? At least so long as we remain democratic. Ugh. Okay, I don't want to see any sad news about cats being killed or dogs being let off for doing it, so we'll skip over that. Health. This all ties into the election and to Brexit as well. There's no getting away from Brexit in relation to any of this, because I think it's 10% of our doctors and nurses are from the EU, and then another 5 to 10%. This is remembering off the top of my head. Like I say, I can't visit a lot of websites at the moment. Are from outside the EU, especially in cities where there's more pressure on services and so on. So you can say that immigration is putting pressure on NHS services, but it's also providing 10 to 20% of the staff, which takes the pressure off. And these are positions we can't fill locally. And already we've seen Boris say that, okay, we're going to have a points-based immigration system like Australia, and we're going to make special exceptions for NHS staff, or whatever the fuck he's on about. So if you voted for Brexit because you don't like brown people and you don't like foreigners, guess who's going to be given a fast track to come in, and guess where they're going to be coming from if it's not the EU, and guess what religion they're going to support. Congratulations, you played yourself. And staffing shortages are affecting everything, and we're going into winter now, which is always a stretch point for the NHS and other emergency services. We've seen the flooding up north and how that's not being tackled particularly well. This should all theoretically play into Labour's hands and the Lib Dems' hands, because they're saying cancel Brexit, keep the staff. But no. And it's putting cancer survival rates at risk, which have been improving for a long time. There's people on trolleys in corridors. Boris has said that we're going to get all these new hospitals, but that was already revealed to be a lie even before the election started out. It's just... And we've got a caring crisis, right? Carers for older people. Our population is aging. There's going to be more and more of them. There's nobody younger that's going to be doing it. The pay is shit. And the training is difficult. And if you don't apply those rigorous standards for training, which we've already relaxed about as far as they can go, how are you going to look after your elders? Fuck me running. What else have we got? Oh, UK news. Prince Andrew, right. But guess we'd better talk about this. Prince Andrew was friends with Epstein, who didn't kill himself. So it would seem, from an increasing number of reports and professional opinions and so on, I've been held briefly. I wasn't even in a watched mental facility. Okay, I'm not American, but still, those sheets would tear before you hung yourself, basically. So, yeah, I don't exactly trust it, and he was supposed to be monitored and everything. I think this is one thing that both the left and right can agree is looks a bit odd. Now, Prince Andrew has long been a kind of unofficial business ambassador for the UK, or semi-official business ambassador for the UK, jetting around the world, hobnobbing with wealthy people here, there, and everywhere. Amongst them was Epstein. He clearly spent time on his island. There's photos of him with this girl. Bear in mind, 17 is legal here, so it's not like paedophilia or even ephebophilia within the context of our society. It's just grotty, is what it is. So we don't really know whether he did anything actually illegal, whether he did anything nonce-ish, shall we say, to try and avoid YouTube word detection filters. But he's dodgy. He's a bit of a perv. He was always a bit of a playboy going right back. Not that you believe it to look at him. He looks like badly piled jam these days. But even so, it's dodgy. It doesn't look good. And this interview that he did was just fucking terrible. Apparently he doesn't have any PR staff anymore. And it shows. Really, he came across as arrogant, unrepentant, unapologetic, didn't seem to care about what had happened to anyone. It's just not been good. Ugh, and now my mobile internet has gone down, possibly. Fuck's sake. So, which means even this app won't load stuff now. Give me a second to try and fix things. I don't know whether it's Sky having problems. I don't know whether it's some kind of big British hub having problems. work. Yeah, one of these complaints about the broadband nationalisation, or at least the infrastructure nationalisation, was that 5G's coming along, it'll make it redundant. I'm not even getting a 3G or a 4G signal here at the moment. Not a solution. Same problem with rural rollout. God, I can't speak today. And people saying it'll be free, outdated internet. That would still be better than where people are now. And fibre is quite upgradable. Once you've got the fibre in, that's upgradable. That's future-proofed to a degree. Okay, this kind of seems to be working. Again, or not. Maybe it'll pick up the 4G again in a sec. Fuck me. How is it I can stream but I can't load websites? Who fucking knows? Climate pledges. Well, the Greens, obviously. And there's lots of talk about large-scale tree planting. But I've seen people be cynical about that because they say that you're just storing it for your great-grandchildren. Which is true to an extent because then the trees die off and they then put out the carbon. But it will hold carbon so long as we maintain those forests and keep them growing. And the release is slower than the capture. And there are things you can do. So say you plant a really fast growing forest of silver birch, right? And then every few years, because that's a rapid growing wood, you come in, you cut them all down, you replant, and then you sequester that carbon by burying it in a mine and sealing it up, or sinking it to the bottom of the ocean, all the way down, whatever. That's a relatively cost-effective way of sequestering carbon that doesn't rely on high technology or a heavy infrastructure base. So that's one thing you can do. But everyone's trying to up their green credentials. The Tories are outrageously trying to claim that they're the greenest government there's ever been in this country. If it was true, that still wouldn't mean anything, and it's not true. Labour's kind of a bit of a Johnny-come-lately, but better than the Tories on the environment. The Lib Dems are promising, $100 billion climate emergency fund. Okay, that's good. It's a good idea, but that's about dealing with the problems that climate change throws up rather than tackling climate change. So that's more like a kind of staged retreat, I guess, from environmental issues. Schools in crisis. Grandparents are cashing in their pensions and throwing money to keep schools going. Doing this show today, it's just basically impossible, I think. Technology. Okay, CCTV in this country, it's a little bit controversial, but we've kind of got used to it. Americans find it shocking. But speaking of infrastructure, that does mean the infrastructure is already here to introduce Chinese-style kind of social observation and social credit and face recognition and everything. Well, face recognition not so much because the cameras are usually too low quality, but basically the infrastructure is there for us to go full Orwellian. We just haven't yet. But we should increasingly be concerned and worried about that, I think, and invasions to privacy. And I'm just wondering how long it's going to be before privately owned places with CCTV start offering to trade the data with big companies like Facebook or whatever, because they own the data, though technically by some laws you can demand access to any images that a company has of you. There was a brief period where people were doing guerrilla filming, where they would act out a scene in front of CCTV and then go and ask for access to the records. That kind of got the kibosh because they just delay past the deadline where you're allowed to ask for it, or past the deadline where the tapes get wiped and renewed. But yeah, we should be worried about that. Financial firms offering financial services are apparently denying them to women due to biased information, biased statistics. this reminds me of the whole thing about insurance, if you remember, where there was a period where women could get cheaper car insurance because women statistically on aggregate are safer drivers. Well, that's not exactly true. They tend to drive less for shorter distances and less aggressively. So basically a lot of companies put up women-only policies, or whole women-only companies like Sheila's Wheels or whatever sprang up to exploit that. And then there was a ruling in one of the European courts that this was sexist and not allowed, regardless of what the statistics said. So a victory for gender equality, but of course in practice all they did was bump up all the women's insurance costs and didn't bring the men's down. They didn't average out at all. They just used it as an excuse to get more profits. Joker's made $1 billion. That's been in the news. And it's R-rated, and it hasn't been in China. So that's kind of, yeah, that fits a lot of the stories that are grabbing people's attention. I'm sorry this is especially shit today, but like I said, I can't get sites to open, and now I can't get my news app to open either. So I don't know what's going on. Ugh, there's the 4G signal back just at the wrong time. Screw it. Yeah, I'm gonna call that it for today because I just can't get anything to work. Yeah, BBC News site doesn't work. Sky News. Nope. Even Google's struggling now. I don't know why. There's no reports of anything going off, and then some random sites are still working, which makes it sound like it's some kind of international or national routing problem to me. Right. Let's see what about comments. Seb says, for fuck's sake, it's just the national grid, but for the internet instead of power. Yeah. I mean, BT, a private company, essentially owns, what's it, 90... I think it's over 90% of the internet infrastructure in the UK anyway. And that's not particularly competitive because they basically have a monopoly, and they've been using that to strong-arm other internet providers and companies. That's only fairly recently been loosened up a bit. So if it's already a monopoly, it might as well be a state monopoly whose job it isn't to gouge us and take all our money. You know, that sounds better to me. But yeah. I should briefly mention the sort of Lexit side of thing. The left-wing Brexiteers often cite EU rules about nationalisation as a reason to leave the EU because they want to renationalise and the EU gets in the way of it. Well, if you look at various EU countries, most even, have more nationalised industries than we do now. And there's no problem with them and the EU at all. So it's kind of hard to see where that's coming from. It doesn't appear to be true. It's complicated, but it's not as dire of a problem as a lot of the Lexiteers make it out to be. So we could absolutely still renationalise while remaining part of the EU. It's complicated. I was going to go through an article about that today because it was such a big electoral issue, but I can't get the site to open. Morning, Ben. Sorry, you've missed everything. Internet's fucked. 4G's down as well. So I've been mostly kind of improvising. Hi, Colin. Yep, all hail Airstrip 1. In Australia, women in the 18 to 24 bracket get cheaper car insurance. Yeah, now, this is one of those things that's statistically true, but technically it's probably in breach of equality legislation. Is that because they were already nationalised? Possibly, but then if the EU's making these sort of rules, it doesn't really work. I will be right back. I'm just going to try a couple of things and check on the status of the internet. I'm going to go outside and hunt down a 4G signal and try and find out what's wrong. So I'll be back shortly. So hit any questions or comments or anything else you want me to talk about in there, and we'll make this more of a kind of Q&A back and forth and me answering your comments. But I will be right back. I'm just going to try a couple of things. A problem for every games master has always been coming up with adventure ideas. For years now, Postmortem Studios has been helping out with the 100 Adventure Seeds line. These provide adventure ideas for all genres, and you can get them at RPG Now or lulu.com. At the end of World War II, the Axis and the Allies went to war with A-bombs until nobody was left to fight. In this atomic wasteland, a new breed of rockabilly hero arises. From the gleaming domes of Science City Zero to the sleazy roller derbies of Vegas and the sky fortress of the Fourth Reich, there's a new world for the taking. 45 Psychobilly Retropocalypse, available at lulu.com and RPG Now.
Aren't you a little tired of so-called horror media about shiny, sparkly, angsty, whiny monsters? I know I am, and that's why I created Actual Fucking Monsters, where you will play an actual fucking monster doing horrible and monstrous things and being tracked down and killed for it. Buy now at DriveThruRPG, post-mort.com or lulu.com.
The Atomic Age, with its A-bombs, transistorized radios, jet engines, and a new breed of dangerous supervillain, requires heroes to face the challenge. That's where you come in. The world needs you, Agent. Agent of Swing. "Rrrr," said the grinder as it chewed its way through Alice, from the crown of her head all the way down to her toes. It ate the lot of her, unfussy, snout to tail, and cleared its plate. It gnashed its way through her dress, her pinafore, her shoes, and her unmentionables. It chewed her hair, devoured her scalp, gobbled up her arms, wolfed down her legs, gorged itself on her torso, noshed on her skin, and gulped her down without so much as a burp to show for it.
Do you like t-shirts?
Yeah, boy!
Do you like games?
Certainly.
Are you perhaps a little bit kinky?
Yes, quite.
Then buy one of our B&D t-shirts at Teespring. Teespring.com/stores/postmortem-studios. You want to be cool, don't you?
Does the word duh mean anything to you?
Sure, you could play one of those hoity-toity horror games where the most horrifying thing that happens is someone wearing a corset who really shouldn't. Or you could grind a zombie's face into a belt sander.
Postmortem Studios sells a wide variety of stock art, well over 500 pieces, many of them by RPG industry veteran Brad McDevitt. These are available for you to use in your personal or professional projects, whether stories or games or anything else. Check us out at rpgnow.com.
In his house in R'lyeh, great Cthulhu lies dreaming, and when he awakens, he shall have the morning wood of aeons. Call of Cthulhu is a deeply pornographic card game. Enjoy your tentacles.
Tal, friend, and welcome to Gore. Savage and beautiful, John Norman's Gorean saga is brought to life in the Tales of Gore role-playing game and its companion world book, World of Gore. Take flight on a tarn, luxuriate in the bathhouses of Ar, pit your steel against the deadly Kuri, best your enemies and place them in your collar. Tales of Gore uses the D6 system, perfect for both new and old players. You can purchase it from Amazon, RPG Now, or lulu.com. Tar Sada Gore. It's been called misogynistic, racist, a hate group, reactionary. It's been blamed for Trump, for keeping women out of games and technology. None of this is true. If you want the real story, then you need to buy Inside Gamergate.
Machinations of the Space Princess is an old-school RPG with a sci-fi setting. The rules are familiar and at once innovative. Opened up so you can play literally any alien species you can envision. Purchase it at RPG Now or lulu.com.
Postmortem Studios, role-playing games, and a lot more to die for.
post-mort.com.
Old Fat Punks is part caper, part comedy, part nostalgia, and part commentary. It follows three aging punks as they build themselves up for one big, nihilistic last hurrah. You can buy Old Fat Punks at Amazon, Drive-Thru Fiction, or Lulu.com. Follow the links below or search on those sites.
Postmortem Studios is my personal imprint where I create role-playing games, stories, card games, board games, and more. You can get them at RPG Now, Drive-Thru RPG, Lulu.com, and some on Amazon. Role-playing games to die for.
Pulp Nova. Alright, so it would seem, even though all I can see is the headlines, it would seem that Sky Broadband is down. But so is the mobile. So is the mobile. What I expect is happening is that a lot of people in the village are on Sky Broadband, like we are, because they had the best deal at the time. And because that's not working, everyone switched to using their mobiles, putting a sudden load on the local mobile towers. Sky Broadband, actual live news. God knows how I'm still broadcasting. Sky Broadband is suffering a widespread outage this morning, with customers across the UK reporting the popular service is not working. Hundreds of Sky Broadband users appear to be having problems with accessing the internet, with issues starting around 6:30 a.m. We've been having speed issues since last night, so down detectors reporting over 900 people experiencing problems. There's no access across large parts of the UK, including areas such as Croydon, Reading, Swindon, London, Slough, Plymouth and Cardiff. I have piecemeal access and very slow access that isn't really working properly. Doesn't seem to be any reports on when it'll be fixed. Sky's now confirmed the issues. We're aware of an issue. Our teams are investigating, aim to have the service restored as soon as possible. Sorry for the inconvenience we're causing. We'll update when we can. So, yeah. Not especially helpful, but then when are they ever? Yes, Rupert Murdoch trying to put me out of business the way Mr. Burns did for Lisa Simpson, obviously. Colin, I'd love to do some quick research on whether it's because these things were already nationalised for you. I don't think it is, because I think there's been some additional nationalisation since the closer ties in some of these nations. I mean, France is big on nationalisation and public investment. So's Germany. Seems odd. As a gentleman of Britain, I'd like to apologise for the existence of Piers Morgan. So just so we're fair, I guess. Colin says Australia has a few pieces of positive discrimination. There's a few LGBT venues that can legally refuse you service based on your sexuality. Yeah, that's one of these overcorrections that really kind of fucks people over, isn't it? Let's just run a quick test. No, you wouldn't have this issue with Corbyn, and if you did, you could take it up with your MP, right? It's weird because some sites are working and some aren't, which suggests it's a routing issue. I had to use Stream B to stream as well. The other one wasn't working. So God knows what's going on. Is that something? No, that's just my mum telling me not to walk on the tiles when I go over to check on her. yeah, so there's not a lot I can do this morning. I can't really go into any depth or bring up any articles or do any on-the-spot research or anything. I guess I might as well call that a morning, unless there's anything else anyone wants to talk about. I covered the basics of the current polls and UK election stuff, including Corbynette. Nationalisation we covered. The women's insurance and financial services thing that came up. That's to do with different rates for women on financial services or something. Colin says, it's hardly an overreaction. It was and still is an effective way to lessen deliberate gay bashings. I think you'd be outnumbered if you went into a gay bar. But I think you still lose people when you start discriminating while claiming to be against discrimination. I've been embattled with TERFs on Twitter for a couple of days over the weekend, and they're just awful bigots. But they hide their bigotry beneath feminism. And that really is all it is. It's they've got an excuse. And they hate men so much, they will attack former men now identifying as women. There's no getting around it. They're horrendously sexist, while still mostly claiming to be against sexism and discrimination. Though a surprising number did admit that feminism wasn't about equality during the discussions. Sure, we're going to have a lovely time tomorrow when it's International Men's Day, which also coincides with Patron Appreciation Day on Patreon. So that should be fun. Right. Well, if the internet's fucked, there's not a lot I can really do today. I don't know whether PlayStation streaming will work if I try and do that. Colin says, I agree, but it made sense to me, so I never got my nose out of joint over it. Hypocrisy bothers me more than it probably should. But that's my problem. Right. I don't know what's working, how long it's going to work, or whatever. If I've got some internet, I should try and get some work done. What's coming up? Waiting on the card game print proofs. Writing up or adding the statistics and additional material to a gore adventure that I gave out to someone to write. Looks like they'll be doing more in the future. They get it, which is nice. But then I've got to wait for art on that. What else? Trigger warnings. Podcast should be along soon. It's the one I'll be doing with Rachel Haywire. Creatively, we just kind of mesh. That's almost certainly going to be called Narrative Attack. And once I've heard from Rachel today, I'll be editing that, so it might be going up. Don't know how rapidly, though. I put All Goblins Are Bastards and Satana Station for Machinations of the Space Princess on the back burner a bit, because last month was so fucked because of the cat and because of Mum. I just couldn't do as much during Schlocktoberfest as I wanted to, so I'm going to take more time and put some more polish on them. I think that's about it. So yeah, I should probably go and get on with work, and I'll have a wander, see if I can get a stronger mobile signal and find out what's going on. Yeah, bit of a damp squib this morning, for which I apologise, but I will see you all later. Zang.